switched hard pivot time to Lena Khan, our friend Lena Khan.
Yeah.
Who's been here at the bookstore for a really cool Q&A with you.
Yeah.
And is now taking on Amazon.
Yeah.
So what's she doing here? What's happening?
I really like, and I've been very publicly supportive of what she's doing here specifically. And I think it's very good, which is what she is saying is Amazon's dominance in the online retail marketplace is so severe and so overwhelming that no one can compete, number one. Number two, if you are a vendor on the Amazon platform, you effectively have to pay them kickbacks. You have to buy advertising.
This is exactly what Apple does, right?
I think Apple should be investigated too.
Right.
But you have to pay them all kinds of kickbacks to not have them put you on page 37 instead of page 1 or 2 of the search results. And they control a tremendous amount of the online marketplace shopping. Not all of it, but a significant percentage. And where my argument has been is less even around the legal merits of the case. Like I saw a piece in the Times over the weekend that Farhad Manjoo, who's a tech columnist, wrote, kind of making the case for argument, making the case for Amazon and saying, really their market share is not as big as we think. Maybe he's right. That's for the court.
Did that surprise you to read that in the New York Times?
A little bit, because it seemed like he was sort of like reciting the talking points. So I'm not sure, but he seems like a guy with integrity, so I'm going to assume he believes what he says. So fine. But the point is, I don't know what's going to happen in the court case or not. I don't know if the FTC has a slam dunk case or not. But here's what I do know. As an early stage tech investor, given the market dominance of Amazon, Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, it is impossible to invest in any early stage companies that could attempt to compete with them, right? Because when you're investing in a new company, you have to ask yourself two questions, especially if you're in their space. One, is the incumbents, or say Amazon in this case, more likely to build this thing themselves or to buy X company that we're thinking about? And two, why wouldn't and couldn't Amazon just squash them, right? And the answer on the first one is sometimes build, sometimes buy, but the answer is always yes on the second one, which is they have too much market power not to be able to do that, because when you're an early stage startup, you raise a couple of $1 million and you're trying to do everything with a couple of $1 million and you can't compete against a company like Amazon. And here's the real problem. It's not even that I dislike Amazon, right? Like, I'm sitting here in the independent bookstore that I own and lose tons of money on, and I'll admit that I counted the day, I've bought well over 100 books on Kindle this year. I happen to like reading both in hardcover and on my iPad. And so I use Amazon all the time. I don't have a problem with Amazon in terms of a service provider. But I know this. Right now, they are an incredibly innovative, transformative company. Their cloud business is incredible. They're doing all kinds of really cool things. This is true.
Plus my wife works there.
Plus Sarah works there, right. But they are subject to the laws of gravity just like everyone else. And what goes up comes down, which means eventually the great founder, in this case Bezos, moves on. Andy Jassy seems like a worthy successor, but eventually, it starts to sort of erode. You get more of a CYA culture, more bureaucratic, more kind of internally political, and you get stagnation. And all of a sudden the innovations are less and less because people are more worried about protecting their turf than they are about sort of groundbreaking new ideas. And then eventually the company really suffers, right? Like when we were kids, IBM, General Electric were these just like, they were going to dominate the world forever, right? Geniuses, so smart. Jack Welch was the biggest genius in the world. General Electric's like an afterthought now. And that's going to happen to Amazon eventually too. When that happens, and this is what I'm mostly concerned with, are there people ready to step up and take their place in the market? That only happens if early stage tech startups are funded and are able to go ahead and try to compete. Most will fail, but as always, a few will manage to find ways to succeed. If no one like me can invest in that early stage alternative because Amazon's market power is so dominant that there's just no point whatsoever, then those companies aren't going to be funded, they're not going to be created, and then when Amazon eventually does stagnate, which they will eventually, and there's no one to take their place, you have a huge hole in the economy. And so I think the FTC's job is twofold. Part of it is to specifically look for instances of, uncompetitive market behavior. And part of it is, along with the National Economic Council, and the Treasury, and the SEC, and everyone else, to think about the state of the U.S. economy, not just today, but in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And when you look down the road a little bit, absent doing something about the sort of overly monopolistic power that companies like Amazon have, the economy is going to have a real problem. And so I really applaud what Lena Khan and the FTC is doing here.
And what about the politics of it? So, looking at just like the headlines, which is probably the most that any American really pays attention to this, other than people like you or maybe me. What is this? Is this like Biden sort of appealing to the sort of like lefties? Like what's happening here?
I think it's one of those things where it's a political, somewhere between a winner and a non-entity for Biden, right? It's a winner in that people on the left probably are excited about it, but also keep in mind the far right, they hate Biden. It's not that they're going to vote for him, but they also don't like giant corporations and anti-competitive behavior too.
Right.
So you're not going to really get like the Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and all those lunatics screaming about this because they actually kind of agree, right? Not in the same way like Josh Hawley was on the picket line for GM. So you have some unity there. And then the average person, one, FTC, antitrust, so boring that you keep your eyes glassed over. And two, I think we all have this sort of like acceptance of Amazon that like they are a useful service. We all take advantage of it. But I don't love Amazon. I just use Amazon, right? And if I don't have any particular loyalty to them, and so my guess is that's true of most people. The company that probably has more actual loyalty is Apple. Because people, your phone is such an extension now of yourself, of your identity, that people do connect to it a lot more than they do, a particular marketplace like Amazon. But even Apple, I think, is losing that luster.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that probably there's more love out there in the middle of America for Amazon than you might be thinking, because I think people live on it and really like organize their lives around the endless like stream of packages coming into their home and the incredible sort of convenience of that. But like I said, I'm biased. So what is the Amazon play here then? Obviously a handicap of the government in a case like this is you're talking about a multi-year. It's not going to be decided tomorrow, next year, next even like 2 or 3 years.
This is a very long, complicated case.
Lena Khan will be on to her next job before this is resolved.
Maybe. If Biden gets reelected, if Biden serves a second term, it will get resolved somewhere, yay or nay, in that period of time. So it's possible she'll be around for it.
Right. I mean, it's amazing how long the Microsoft Activision thing took.
Which is years. Yeah.
I mean, it's still going.
Oh, Activision. Yeah. Even with Microsoft.
Oh yeah.
Antitrust in the late '90s went on for a long time.
Right. So let's just talk about it from the Amazon perspective. If you were advising them, what do they just run out the clock?
There's two. There's a legal strategy and there's a political strategy. The legal strategy, I'm sure they have it up and down covered already, which is they're going to argue, as you saw in that Times piece, or actually a very small part of the overall marketplace. Most people do their shopping still in physical stores, not digital. And then within digital, yes, there's us, but there's Walmart and there's Target and there's all these other marketplaces too. And we may be the most famous, but we're just being punished for our success, and we are not actually as big as you think, and B, any different than any other online marketplaces that you haven't taken action against. So that's the legal argument, and it may succeed. I don't know. Mm-hmm. The political argument is tricky, right? Because if this were a scorched earth, do or die situation, you would say, get the public up in arms by saying, you know what, if the FTC succeeds here, you're no longer going to get your packages, or it's going to take twice as long, or it's going to cost twice as much, or kind of like what we would do with Uber, right? Like basically, because with Uber, it was existential. Either we would survive in that marketplace or we wouldn't. Amazon could do that, and you're right, maybe through that they could rally people in the middle of the country, people in the suburbs, things like that. At the same time, at a cost to the business, right? Because people, again, aren't paying that close attention. And so if you're telling them, oh, everything's going to cost double, you don't know if what they're hearing is, I better step up and try to save Amazon, or, oh, Amazon's a lot more expensive now, I should go somewhere else. And so my guess is that the business risk is too great for the political strategy, and I also don't think the court is that likely to be that swayed by the political strategy. So I think now that it's at the legal phase, it's probably mainly just a legal strategy, and the comm strategy is what you saw at the Times. It's just the talking points. There's many ways that they can get them out there.